The next technique that we're going to work on today is going to be our slicing technique. So we're going to be using our foil, and one of the things that I want to make sure I go in and remind you before we get started is when you're tearing your foils, make sure that they stay nice and clean. When you continue to work in nice clean foils, nice clean partings, nice clean sections, your end result is going to be nice and clean. So you see how flat those are, they're not wrinkled up. You want to continue that as you're tearing your foils for foil placement. I'm going to show you the diagonal placement for our slicing on the sides. So again, I want to come in, and most of our clients, and of course especially our mannequins, have this little area or this little peak sideburn area right here in front of the ear. And you do want to put some highlights in that. But I want to come in and I'm going to take a diagonal back parting. The hair that I'm not working with, I want to keep that nice and neat out of my way. I'm going to come in and do a very thin slice off the top of this area. Now, because we're in the corner here, once I take that slice, I want to come in and do a very light weave off of that slice. We don't want a whole lot of product and a whole lot of very standout highlights in this area. I'm going to apply my foil just like I did in the back. I want to make sure that that's laid against the scalp. I'm applying my product under that edge of the foil. I'm going to put my hand underneath to hold my foil. I go back, work that product about 1/8 of an inch away from the scalp. Fold up without pulling down. And do another fold at the bottom here. We want to fold in like we did in the back. But one of the things I'm going to show you a little bit differently right in this area, because we're working with a very little bit of hair, is I'm going to take this little edge and fold here and here just to hold that foil in place so it doesn't slide out of the hair. Okay, so again in this section we're still at that sideburn area. I want to take a nice thin slice, and then what I want to do is do a really fine weave. We're still working in that area that's considered the sideburn. We don't want it real heavy there. So get that foil nice and close to the scalp. I'm applying my product under the edge of the foil. I'm going to use my hand to hold that foil in place. Go back, work your product up to about 1/8 of an inch away from the fold, away from the scalp. You're going to fold up once. Make sure that's nice and neat. We're going to do about 1 inch fold at the bottom. Fold our sides in. Once I fold my sides in, I'm going to come in and do just 2 little corner folds to hold that foil in place so it doesn't slide out of the hair. Again, we're going to take a diagonal back slice. Make sure your partings are nice and neat. You almost want to see a line there in the scalp. Be careful though when you're working. Some of your rat tail combs, the metal tips, have a little bit skinnier metal tip on them, and they're a little bit finer at the end, so you can poke your client. Don't want to do that. But you do want to be able to run that tip across the scalp, because that's what's going to make that nice parting. So make it nice and clean. So this time I've done the first 2. We've actually did a slice and then weaved a very fine weave off that slice. Now we can start working with our slicing again. Now understand that on your mannequins, we know how the hair is placed. Some areas are missing hair and some areas have a lot of hair. but you still want that parting to be nice and neat. Come in, fold up once, fold up a second time, sides in, nice and neat. We're gonna come in one more time, and you see I've got the mannequin tilted to the side. Just makes it a little bit easier to access the area on the side of the head, and it also makes it a lot easier to get those foils to lay properly. So a nice, neat parting. We're still working at 1/2 inch partings now. I'm gonna come in and take a really nice thin slice off the top of that. Put my foil in, go back, make sure that foil is on the scalp. This technique works great for slicing and for weaving on the sides of the head because you can get around the ear. A lot of times if you're doing horizontal partings, even when you're weaving, you're doing horizontal partings, it's a little bit more difficult to get around the ear area. So come in again, work that product up to the edge of the foil, about 1/8 of an inch. Fold up one time, fold up again, and then make sure those sides are folded in. One of the things that you don't want to do is fold the sides in where you fold past the hairline or where that parting is, because then what you're doing is you're converging that hair over and it's sitting outside of the foil. Usually what happens is it pulls product off, or because that hair is sitting outside of the foil, it will actually get product on the hair underneath. So at this point you would work all the way up in your 1/4 of an inch diagonal back partings, making sure you slice off of those 1/4 of an inch partings. If you get to an area that's a little wider, again, depending on the size of the head that you're working on, whether it's a client or a mannequin, sometimes the head's a little bit larger, and this area may be larger, so you may need to place 2 foils as you work up. So you want to continue diagonal back parting, slicing off the top of that, and then work up into your corners. Because we're in an area that's close to the round of the head, we're still going to take slices. I know in the back we worked to this top here around the crown or behind the apex, and we started weaving our last 2 to 3 foils. Here we can still keep that slicing technique. With your slices, you want to keep them really thin and fine, unless your client really wants to see that very dramatic chunk of light or chunk of color in their hair. If they want to see that, my suggestion at that point would actually to be going in and still taking thin slices, but take some back to back. You can also, in this area, just like we did in the back when we started working in the corners, if you're comfortable with it, you can come in and start working that hair or with those foils into more of a triangle pattern. Just lays a little bit better and it stays out of the way of your next section. Okay, so work up to the corner and then